Look, voice AI, it's already quite out there. A lot of players in my industry and in the market are doing it. I've recently been experimenting with that on the drive-through, it's quite interesting to do an AI project that is directly customer based. I think there's a lot of people that do AI in the background, which is maybe like streamlining your pricing or how you sell or, all those kind of things. But doing a customer-facing technology is a whole nother ballgame.
And as well as convincing stakeholders, digital transformation as a whole can be challenging. What would you say are some sort of common hurdles that you've encountered, or how have you navigated those to drive that meaningful change?
Francesca, you know as well as me, people love change. They do not at all love change. It is super difficult. I find it probably one of the most challenging things to be honest. It also depends on the size of your ship, right? Like if you're doing it on a small startup scale, it's probably quite easy. But if you're working on a company that's, got 5,000 or more employees, like to try change the way they work is incredibly difficult. I actually read an article the other day that said that the death of the roadmap, which was quite interesting because when we build software or we build a product, we all say we need this feature and we need this feature, operations need this, finance need this. But at the end of the day, we don't know if we're actually serving the customer. Like they're not going to see that report that you've created in the background, right?
Welcome to this week's episode of Akoni Tech Talks. We are joined by Will Snow today. Will, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Francesca.
And there's lots to unpack in this episode, particularly your journey in leadership. So I'd love to start with the fact, your journey's taken you across regions, you've scaled various teams and managed them, but what have been some of the key lessons you've learned about empowering teams, especially in multicultural environments?
Yeah, it's a great question. My career has been super diverse, I think more so than most, and across continents, across cultures, which has been fantastic. A great experience for myself, of course. And when I think back, I think the first thing to do from a cultural diversity perspective is to just understand people's culture, right? So put yourself in their shoes, understand what drives them, the psychology behind it. And once you immerse yourself in your culture, people start understanding you a lot better. And with that, you can really start solidifying a team around it. And that's ultimately really the basis for me for leadership, is tying together where people come from, what drives them, and then putting them together in a squad to execute whatever your goal is.
Absolutely. And in your experience, what makes a high-performing team?
This is always a difficult one because I do believe in high caliber people and talent, and I believe that you need to find people that are driven and want to improve themselves. So pulling those kind of people together is very critical. So get the talent there. And then, as I mentioned earlier, if you understand the culture and the psychology behind these people, what drives them, then you can start figuring out how the dynamics work in a team or a squad. And then, you're obviously trying to get them to believe in the same goal, and you work towards that target.
And how do you approach mentoring, say, future leaders, or, why is fostering a culture of continuous learning an important part of that process?
I love this topic. Like mentoring for me is incredible. It's something that I found that I lacked in the past, but slowly throughout my career, because you might come out of university, you're not going to have a mentor just straight off the bat, right? You're still trying to figure out what drives your passions and what you're looking for. And then eventually you start bumping into people that are just incredible, and they see something in you or you see something in them, and it interests you. So I believe in mentoring. I believe it's important to find one. I think you're going to have ones at different stages of your career as you shift. But the importance of it is in life, maybe back in the day, we would have been living in a village or in a tribe, and we would have had this council of elders around us, really like teaching us these different values and principles or skill sets. Today, we're like a global world. We can go find these things on YouTube and we can learn those skill sets, but it lacks that personal interaction, right? And I think you get so much more from that personal interaction.
Yeah.
So finding a mentor to help guide you is actually so invaluable, because they act as more than just a knowledge base. They start giving you ideas on how to get the skills, how to navigate life, people, stakeholders. Things get complex. And I feel like that's what a mentor really gives you.
Has there been a moment in your career that you can reflect on where you really noticed significant growth within yourself?
Yeah, there's been a couple. The first one for me was jumping out of university into my first job in West Africa in Sierra Leone. For those that don't know where that is, that's where the movie Blood Diamond is based. So it was quite a different environment, very much out of my comfort zone, deep into a different culture. And there, it was quite weird because you're coming out of university, you've just finished getting to the top of a hierarchy in one kind of institution, and now you in the working world where you're pretty much nothing again, starting from the ground up. So being there was a massive jump for me, and in that back then I believed in raw talent and just getting the job done.
Yeah.
And I was quite like aggressive and spunky, I'd say. But you start learning with time that there's a lot of experience and knowledge from the people around you. And I mean, relating back to mentors, you kind of meet them, they teach you, and then you slowly start growing again. And you see the transformations. Often you do like 6 months where you don't notice anything, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, look at me 6 months ago, or look at me 5 years ago. And you can see that you've actually grown a lot as a person.
Yeah, and I would say one of the things that probably contributes to transformation is innovation as well, which has kind of been central to your career. But could you tell us about a time where you sort of identified something that felt really innovative and impacted a business or customer experience?
Sure. I've got quite a lot of examples of these in the past. Everything from drone technology to voice AI. It's more recent. So I think talking about voice AI, I think it's more relevant for today's topic. If you kind of think about these use cases, especially in a corporate, it's really difficult to get them across the line to start with. So you've almost got to, again, come back to that belief pillar and start getting stakeholders convinced, get them in your court, and show them that this is what's happening, this is what's trending, and then go for it, right? So like voice AI, for example, we can see ChatGPT is doing it. It's kind of becoming quite centered to how humans interact with technology. And I believe that will be the next kind of step for us to really understand the user experience and the user interface on voice AI, which is now, I reckon, going to be a whole new field. Obviously bringing that sort of kind of technology to a large, Fortune 250, it's a difficult thing to get right. But it's fascinating at the same time.
And as you say, that kind of user experience, customer centricity is at the heart, or should be at the heart, of a lot of things that we do as a business. But how do you ensure that the customer needs remain at the forefront of what you do?
Yeah, customer at the center of everything is it's again a big belief for me. Like in my past life, doing UI and UX before I became a product owner and then a product manager and associate director where I am now. So again, we're coming back to how we use things. What is the experience like for the customer? And it's very interesting. I actually read an article the other day that said that the death of the roadmap, which was quite interesting, because when we build software or we build a product, we all say we need this feature and we need this feature. Operations need this, finance need this. But at the end of the day, we don't know if we're actually serving the customer. Like, they're not going to see that report that you've created in the background, right? With this article, they said it's kind of coming back to just checking your social channels, having customer feedback, and having that at the core, right? And if they're voting up a feature or there's a request that they really want, then that should be what the business addresses first. So from a software and digital and tech perspective, that's how you keep the customer at the front. But again, there's a whole nother ballgame, right? It's management between the business optics, the operations, marketing, and then you're sitting in the middle with tech, right? And you've got to try to balance all these stakeholders. So figuring that out is quite a skill set, and I believe that's what a lot of project managers or product owners do from a day-to-day basis. But you've got to convince the business and those stakeholders that, guys, we're doing this because this is what's right for the customer, and we sell that first, right? We put that at the heart of everything we do. Yeah,
and as well as convincing stakeholders, digital transformation as a whole can be challenging. What would you say are some sort of common hurdles that you've encountered, or how have you navigated those to drive that meaningful change?
Francesca, you know as well as me, people love change. They do not at all love change. It is super difficult. I find it probably one of the most challenging things to be honest. It also depends on the size of your ship, right? Like if you're doing it on a small startup scale, it's probably quite easy. But if you're working on a company that's, got 5,000 or more employees, like to try change the way they work is incredibly difficult. And again, it comes along with actually taking your stakeholders on the journey with you. If you started a project and you're pitching to get that project going, you're not going to just get it going. You should have actually consulted the other divisions already. You should have had marketing included. You should have had operations included. And again, bringing those stakeholders with you on the journey makes it so much easier when it comes time to execute. And I've made that mistake in the past where I've gone ahead and executed a project without operations. And then when it came time to launch that, I'd have to go back, bring them up to speed, then train the staff that are going to be using that piece of technology. And that happens to all of us, right? That's a learning curve. And so my advice in this, if you want to do digital transformation well, bring your stakeholders along on the journey very early.
Yeah. And voice AI is a fascinating area. As you said, AI is going to be at the forefront of everything at the moment. But could you discuss your work with voice AI and how you see this technology transforming not only the customer engagement, but the way businesses operate?
Sure. So look, voice AI, it's already quite out there. A lot of players in my industry and in the market are doing it. I've recently been experimenting with that on the drive-through, it's quite interesting to do an AI project that is directly customer-based. I think there's a lot of people that do AI in the background, which is maybe like streamlining your pricing or how you sell or, all those kind of things. But doing a customer-facing technology is a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, ChatGPT's obviously they've recently or a few months ago launched their voice into action with the tool. And although it's not perfect, it's pretty good, right? It's you can practice your podcast interview, you can do pretty much anything with it, which is it's great for you to even have a bit of a companion, right? So getting these technologies right is very fascinating because I think from a business perspective, there's scalability that comes to it. There's lower prices that you could potentially get, labor savings. There's a lot of things that could come from a business perspective. Looking at the customer side of things, it's you're always going to get a constant kind of interaction. And if I think about a staff sitting behind a counter somewhere, they might give you they might have a bad day and they might not get the upsell or they might not give you a great experience. And that's a tough thing to get around. Whereas with technology, we can always make sure that we have a standardized service, and we can tweak that a little bit for culture, location, even the person, right? Bringing personalization into it. So I think there is a lot to come from voice AI. I think it's still got a little bit to go. I don't think it's completely autonomous yet. So from a support perspective, you'll still probably find that anything from 10 to 20% is still going to break through to a real person, and then. Yeah, I guess those are sort of the main gists of voice AI. And then, like I mentioned, from a customer experience perspective and a user interaction, the kind of psychology around how we interact with people is very different to how you talk to an Alexa, Google Home, or Siri. So when you drive up to a drive-through, for example, you are now talking to an AI that sounds completely like a human, and you speak so quickly. AI has still got a lot to kind of figure out. That interaction isn't completely pure yet. Whereas people, when you talk to a human being, our brains are so well developed and we can quickly switch between topics and things like that. So I'd say that's where AI still needs to grow, and people also need to realize that you're interacting with an AI, not with a person.
Oh, sorry, I'm really chuckling at the thought of, when Alexa doesn't hear me to stop and I'm shouting at her to stop the alarm or something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like for me, Alexa listens to me when I tell her to turn the lights off, but she doesn't listen to my wife.
And you have a strong foundation in using data for decision making. But what role do data and analytics play in your strategic planning?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, in the past, I came from a background of geographical information systems. So, a lot of my decisions have always been data driven, but more from a spatial sense. I think it's easy to show how it helps us make our decisions, like on a day-to-day basis. And it should be always in your locker, right? You should always be using data to justify your point of view, or argue where you're coming from when you're trying to get something over the line. And I think trying to build it into a strategy, I think data gives you a lot of insights. It gives you a lot of forecasting kind of pieces. So I strongly believe that you should always take your analytics, you should forecast them out. And before you jump into something or execute, rather bring that data into your strategy. Because you'll find, like, for us, obviously opening a restaurant, for example, in a market that is heavily cash, I'm not going to go launch a whole lot of technology pieces there because, there's a lot of financial pieces to get across the line. So how do I make sure that we still use labor or something in those markets before we pull the trigger on some heavy technology?
One of the things we've kind of talked about on the podcast before is that there is a fear that tech will replace people, but it seems it's about finding the right people to partner with the tech to kind of move businesses forward. Would you agree with that we shouldn't be fearful of technology?
Yeah, I always think back to, like, the Industrial Revolution, right?
Yeah.
And now we're on a completely different revolution here now, where we've got, like, AI, and it's like Industrial Revolution was all about replacing blue-collared workers. Now it's like white-collared workers, and it did worry me at the start of it, because I didn't realize what I was dealing with when AI really hit the kind of floor about 2 years ago. After embracing it, it's been an ally, right? A lot of people think, oh, you can't do that, you're cheating. That's not it, right? At the end of the day, it's about getting the delivery done. And I still think AI is very much a partner in what you do, as well as any technology tool that you use, right? If you're using a software like a Miro board or a Trello, like, that's actually just helping you, right? You've moved away from paper to software. So likewise, we're just lifting the load on maybe our mental brains, like, running around 24/7, and it's just helping us also just ideate, get our ideas out. And ultimately, you're always going to customize that slightly to put out what you need to put out. So yeah, I'd agree with you.
Yeah, I am still a lover of a paper diary. How do you when you're around tech all the time? How do you?
Look, I'm a millennial as well, so like, I do love a paper diary. Like, there's something about writing on it, going back to find your notes if you ever need them.
Yes.
Probably very inefficient, but it's useful.
And with AI and machine learning being pivotal in today's business landscape, what would you say are some of the most exciting applications that you see for these technologies?
Yeah, it's, again, a great question. I think I'm really excited about voice AI, and I think I'm going to hold on to that, because I believe that what's the most natural way for us to interact as humans?
By talking. Yeah.
So we're not actually naturally built to type or text or voice note even.
Yeah.
Like, so if you think about it, coming back to voice AI and how we interact with voice AI, and obviously that now gives you access to everything else below it, machine learning, whatever it might be, interacting with softwares, integrations across different platforms, communicating across cultures. I see that as a big pivotal shift for how we use AI and machine learning. So I think that for me is a very exciting space. And then, of course, just the pure capabilities of really starting to analyze data on a large scale for it to allow you to figure out where you want to go and execute. So it makes you a lot more targeted. Yeah. And you can start automating a lot of those processes as well. So.
And looking at, cutting edge technology and the way things are innovating, there will be a lot of jobs in the near future as well, that didn't exist years ago. Looking at your kind of career journey, where did your interest in it all sort of begin?
Sheepers. Okay. Well, I'm a farm boy off an ostrich farm, if you can believe that or not, and I did a BSc in entomology and geography. So it seems very strange that I'm, an associate director in the digital space, which is, I've come a long way talking about, looking back. So I don't know. Always at a young age, I was interested in computers. My parents had one in their office, and we'd of course go and play games on there every now and then. And then I was very fortunate because my parents like never really took gaming away from me. They let me embrace it. So gaming was a big in for me. And then just meeting the right friends, going to LAN conventions back in the day. That must make me sound so old. But from that, you kind of start experimenting with technology and figuring it out. And I guess studying geographical information systems while I was at uni gave me that data component and really kept on unlocking technologies, because the geospatial kind of world, there's a lot of things to do with satellites, GPSs, remote sensing, drones nowadays, and that kind of just kept on steering my career more into that space. And then ultimately how I ended up in software was one of the companies I used to work for wanted an app built to deliver aerial imagery from drones to their farmers or to mines or to forestry kind of organizations. So I said I'd build that, and I ultimately became a product owner in that moment.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how technology really found me, and that was probably about 8 or 9 years ago now, looking back. But that's sort of how I got here today.
And looking back at your career, is there a project or initiative that you feel particularly proud of?
Yeah, I'd say I have several, but one of the biggest one for me was when we rolled out kiosks in Africa. So we had this big mandate to get technology out to as many stores as we can, because every business wants to be tech-centric now, making sure that you've got 100% digital transactions, and that's ultimately what we were chasing. So we went to roll out kiosks, so that's touchscreen ordering, in as many stores as possible. And I think in the space of 9 months, and I mean this is very much credit to the people that I had around me and the team, we did about 530 odd stores, which is incredible if you think about how you have to spin up those projects, make sure you've got the right funding, the budgets. For us in that case, it was managing different franchisees and then getting it executed and getting kiosks into all these stores. So I'm just so proud of that moment of really bringing all these people together. And we had obviously several vendors that worked with us on that. But it was an incredible experience, and it was a great result at the end of it.
And fast forwarding to your current role, can you tell us a little bit more about what a day looks like for you and what you love about your job?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think we stated it, but I'm Associate Director of Digital Technologies at KFC. So we're in the MENA region here. So, I mean, a typical day could be anything from going to store, testing, meeting the team members that work there, and testing the technologies. Like I feel like I always irritate people because I'm like always trying to change things, like when they see me. But generally those interactions are awesome, I think people just want to be heard, like in those instances. But so that's like going to the store, doing those kind of pieces, and then anything from going back on jumping on calls with franchisees from around the region, figuring out what their needs are, how we can help and unlock things for them. And then also there's a lot of project-based stuff. So, our role it's quite spread, should I say.
Yeah.
So you do everything from developing a e-commerce piece and launching it in a market, to making sure that this market is doing A/B testing and it's running, to making sure the solution is actually making money. And then we're also trying to consolidate all these technology stacks. So there's a lot of meetings from anything, like I say, from a franchisee level to where you're dealing with the GM, a CTO for that country, to going to a store, making sure the solution's running, testing, seeing what customer interactions are looking like. That's an average day, I guess.
Yeah. What do you love the most?
It's so interesting because for me, the reason I studied a BSc was like to get away from people, because I thought I could do a science, I'll do a hard biological science. I don't want to deal with people. And it's so funny now that I'm 36 at the moment. I really love interacting with people. So my favorite piece is actually going to a market, doing market visits, meeting the franchisee and their teams, understanding their lives, their culture. I love that. So that's a big piece for me.
Yeah. And we come on to the trending in tech round. So A recent Forbes article reads, as technology advances, so does the list of conveniences at our fingertips, especially in the world of content marketing. We've talked about the way AI is transforming the market as a whole, but it can also change our approach to content strategy and finding the right tools to kind of personalize content. However, while AI can handle many tasks, it often still requires a human touch to truly resonate with audiences. Although it's really enhancing the way things are going and there are these incredible tools on offer now, it isn't always the best solution. So, for example, ChatGPT, sometimes it's very obvious if people don't add that personal touch that they've used ChatGPT. But in your experience, what aspects of content strategy work best with AI, and where should human creativity kind of make the biggest impact?
I think every piece of technology has its use and place, and I think that's something you obviously have to decide. Coming from a spatial background again, like using satellite imagery for a really large estate that you wanted to shoot makes sense, but it doesn't make sense to do that with drones, right? It's going to take forever to fly that. So using the right tool is critical for the job at hand. So you need to assess it, right? So when we look at content, I think AI can obviously accelerate a lot of things for you, but I still think it's lacking in the creative space. I know there's things like Midjourney now and generating whatever image you think, but I guarantee you a professional brand is always going to do a shoot, right? So in terms of content, I still believe you're not going to beat the photographer right now, because getting those elements right and those touches, and you can see if you look at like a Nike or an Adidas, those things are shot with perfection, right? And there's intent behind them. If you say, generate me a Nike tacky with water spraying off of it or whatever, you might get quite close to it, but it might be out of context slightly. So from image generation, I'd still say go the route of shooting things as much as you can. And then I still think AI can help you from a data analytics perspective, choose what to target, and I think it should be helping you there. If you're not using it yet, you should. Because that's going to make you a lot more targeted and get you a lot more value for your money. But again, from a visual perspective, I still think that should be very much human-based. From where I would use AI in my content strategy, it would be from the data analytics perspective.
It's really interesting hearing you say that about photography, because I saw an image on LinkedIn the other day and I had to double take because I noticed 7 fingers and it was so obvious. The hands are the giveaway, I think, with AI imagery.
There's a joke that said we should all be wearing a 6th rubber finger. Because then if anyone takes photos of us, we can just say they're AI generated. So.
And finally, we come on to our quick fire this or that brand deal. So, iPhone or Samsung?
Can I say I'm agnostic? Like, they are both fantastic pieces of technology, and I've actually used both in the past. I have recently switched to iPhone, so I'm probably leaning that way. But fantastic technology if you look at what they look like from 20 years ago. For sure.
And Spotify or Apple?
Spotify.
Netflix or cinema?
Netflix.
Laptops or tablets?
Laptop.
ChatGPT or virtual reality?
ChatGPT.
And video calls or voice notes?
I think video calls for me there.
Yeah. And finally, if you could bring back one original piece of tech that no longer exists, or it's evolved from its original format, what would it be and why?
I've been thinking about this question since you sent it to me. It's a very, very interesting question. But I'm going to give you a very strange answer. I'm going to say blimps.
What's that?
So like the Hindenburg blimps, like it's a mode of air transport. Right?
Oh, I see.
So I think, imagine our skyline, like not maybe filled with blimps, but I just think it would add such a fascinating kind of piece to a skyline of a city. If we did have blimps, like there's opportunities for like luxury, like slow cruises in the air, or fine dining, to even advertising. Like you could really get into a space as a brand if we had some sort of futuristic blimp, right? So I think that would be really cool to bring it in with today's technology, of course, paired up with that. I just think the the opportunities are probably endless. It would really just be something completely different.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. That we haven't had an answer like that. So we have had steam train.
Ah, cool. Love that.
So, that brings us to the end of this week's episode of Oconee Tech Talks. Will, it's been a real pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for coming.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me, Francesca. It's been great.